Imagine ancient Greece, over 2,400 years ago, in the town of Elea. Here lived Zeno, a philosopher whose laboratory was his mind. Zeno's mission? To defend his teacher Parmenides, who claimed that all change and motion are illusions, and that reality is a single unchanging whole. That sounds bizarre to us. We see change everywhere. Seeds grow, the sun rises, we move from place to place. But Zeno wanted to show that our everyday ideas about the world lead to logical traps. Paradoxes. A paradox is a puzzle that seems impossible but follows from logical steps. Zeno's paradoxes weren't just clever tricks. They were designed to make people question the very foundations of reality. He challenged people to wonder, does the world really work the way we think it does? Zeno's paradoxes became legendary, sparking debates that lasted centuries. He wasn't trying to prove you can't walk across a room, he knew you could. Instead, he argued that of how we move, by crossing an infinite series of smaller and smaller distances, was logically flawed. Most of Zeno's original writings are lost, but his puzzles survived because great minds like Plato and Aristotle couldn't stop thinking about them. These paradoxes became a cornerstone of Western thought. Zeno's legacy is about the courage to challenge the obvious and to see that the universe might be far stranger than it appears. His paradoxes invite us to look deeper, question our assumptions, and join the grand human quest for understanding. Zeno set the stage for centuries of debate about infinity, space, time, and motion, a conversation that continues to this day. Among Zeno's puzzles, the paradox of place stands out for its simplicity and depth. It asks, what does it mean for something to somewhere? Zeno starts with a simple idea: everything that exists has a place. My coffee cup is on the desk is in the office is in a building, and so on. But then Zeno asks, if a place is a real thing, doesn't it also need a place? So where is the place of my office? In the building. But the building's place needs a place, and so on, an infinite regress. To locate anything, you must first locate its place, then the place of that place, and so on, forever. You never reach a final, ultimate location. Imagine a wooden block on a table. Where is the block? In the space of the block. But where is that space? In the room. The room is in the house in the world in the solar system. Each place is like a container inside another container with no final outermost container. If the concept of place requires an infinite number of places, the idea itself seems to collapse. It's like a staircase that ascends forever without a first step. Zeno's point isn't that the block isn't on the table, but that our idea of place as a container is logically incoherent. He forces us to ask, is space a thing that holds objects or something else entirely? This simple puzzle opens up a universe of questions about the nature of reality. The paradox of place is a challenge to our most basic assumptions about existence. Zeno's paradox of place is so puzzling because it takes a reasonable idea and leads us to an absurd conclusion through infinite regress. Our minds like finite chains. The book is on the shelf in the library on the street. But Zeno asks, what is the container? Where does space itself reside? If every location needs another location, existence seems to hang on an endless chain. The paradox forces us to confront the nature of infinity. Not just a big number, but a process that never ends. If locating an object requires completing an infinite number of steps, it seems impossible for anything to be anywhere. The paradox doesn't just question space, it questions our ability to define anything in a final, absolute way. Zeno shows that if we treat space as a thing, we get into trouble. By treating space as a noun, we create infinite nesting. Maybe space isn't a giant box that holds the universe. Maybe it's not a container at all. Zeno whispers across time, perhaps we need a new idea of what where even means. Zeno's paradox asks, what is space? Is it an absolute stage, or does it emerge from relationships between objects? Newton saw space as a fixed, infinite grid, a backdrop for reality. In Newton's universe, you could, in theory, point to an absolute location. But even Newton couldn't escape Zeno's question, where is itself? Zeno's paradox highlights the difficulty of imagining a background that isn't set against another background. The alternative is the relational view, championed by Leibniz. Space isn't a thing but a network of relationships. There's no empty stage, just actors and the distances between them. The cup's place is defined by its relation to the desk, the computer, the walls. Space is the sum of all such relations. It doesn't exist before objects but emerges from them. In this view, the paradox of place dissolves. If space isn't a container, you don't need to ask where the place is. the question becomes meaningless, like asking the flavor of the number 7. Zeno's puzzle forces us to adopt a more sophisticated relational understanding of space. It's a filter, pushing us to rethink the very fabric of reality. Aristotle, a century after Zeno, tackled the paradox of place head-on. He agreed that treating place as a container led to infinite regress, so he redefined it. For Aristotle, the place of an object is the inner boundary of the body that contains it. Think of a fish in a bowl. Its place is the inner surface of the water touching the fish. The water's place is the inner surface of the glass bowl, and so on. A boundary isn't a three-dimensional container but a two-dimensional surface. This sidesteps Zeno's regress. A boundary doesn't need its own place. The chain of places comes to a natural end. Aristotle's solution isn't perfect, but it shows that by refining our concepts we can resolve apparent contradictions. He demonstrated that many paradoxes are problems of definition, not logic. Aristotle didn't just solve the puzzle, he showed us how to solve puzzles like it. The paradox of place was just one of Zeno's many puzzles. His most famous is Achilles and the tortoise. Achilles gives a tortoise a head start, but Zeno argues Achilles can never catch up, because he must first reach where the tortoise was, by which time the tortoise has moved ahead, and so on, infinitely. The dichotomy paradox says to cross a room, you must first go halfway, then half of what's left, and so on. An infinite number of steps. Both challenge the idea that space and time can be infinitely divided. The arrow paradox looks at time as a series of instants. At any instant, a flying arrow is at rest. If time is just a collection of instants, when does the arrow move? The paradox of the grain of millet asks, if one grain makes no sound, how can 1,000 grains make a sound? How do properties emerge from collections? All these puzzles attack our common-sense understanding of space, time, and motion. Zeno's paradoxes force us to think more deeply about infinity and the structure of reality. They show that logic can lead us to surprising, even unsettling conclusions. These mind-benders have shaped philosophy and science for centuries. They're not just historical curiosities, they're still relevant today. Zeno's suite of paradoxes is a masterclass in critical thinking. They challenge us to question what we take for granted, and they remind us that the universe is full of mysteries. You might think calculus and modern physics have made Zeno's paradoxes obsolete, but they're more relevant than ever. Calculus, developed by Newton and Leibniz, was a direct response to Zeno's puzzles, showing that infinite steps can add up to a finite distance. Achilles can catch the tortoise, mathematically, but the philosophical questions remain. Is space infinitely divisible? Is time made of points? Zeno's paradoxes forced mathematicians to build more rigorous foundations, leading to set theory and new ideas about infinity. Today, at the frontiers of physics, we still grapple with Zeno's questions. Some theories suggest space and time are granular, not smooth, made of tiny, indivisible units. If reality is pixelated, Zeno's paradoxes dissolve in a new way. There's a smallest possible distance. Zeno's ancient questions still shape our quest to understand the universe, from the smallest scales to the largest. His puzzles are alive in the heart of modern science. In our tech-driven world, why bother with Zeno's ancient riddles? Their value isn't in the answers, but in the questions they provoke. Zeno's paradoxes are mental workouts, sharpening our ability to think critically and spot hidden assumptions. They teach us to question what seems obvious and to probe the weak points in arguments. This skill is vital in a world full of information and persuasion. Zeno's puzzles are a lesson in intellectual self-defense. They remind us that science and philosophy are two sides of the same coin: curiosity. The biggest breakthroughs often start with simple, philosophical questions. Wrestling with Zeno's paradoxes connects us to a tradition of inquiry, stretching from Aristotle to Einstein. Some questions are so profound that every generation must rediscover them. These puzzles remind us that, for all our progress, we're still curious beings under the same starry sky. Zeno's paradoxes keep the spirit of wonder alive. What have we learned from Zeno's paradox of place and his logical mazes? The power of a simple question: why? What if? Zeno showed that common sense isn't always a reliable guide to reality. Our brains evolved for survival, not for understanding infinity or the quantum world. Science and philosophy help us see beyond our intuition. Zeno's paradoxes show that logic can lead to truths that feel alien to our experience. Aristotle's response teaches us that many problems are problems of definition. Progress often comes from asking better questions and clarifying our terms. Zeno's puzzles invite us to cosmic humility and curiosity. They remind us that the universe is stranger than we imagine, and that not having all the answers is okay. When you wonder about place or motion, you join a grand tradition of questioning. The courage to ask why is the engine of all discovery.